Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. I'm Billy Newman. I'm here today with Marina Hansen. How you doing, Marina?
Hey, Billy, I'm doing well.
I really appreciate you doing a little morning podcast with me, and I think we haven't done it in a little bit, but I know we're probably gonna do a few different things, but I want to do a race to 100. I think we're like at 84 or something right now,
Oh, yeah.
so we got like 15 or 16 more.
Yeah, we
I want
should.
to try and get up to 100 and get past that. That'll be fun. That's like an established podcast at that point.
Yeah, 100 episodes. Yeah, we should.
Even though most of them are like silly. It's just me trying to put silly parts of it together. Like at the beginning, like there's like big gaps. It's like 5 minutes while I'm in the other room trying to do something, like get it working. So it was fun though. I really like putting together like the little podcasting stuff, and it's cool too how it's grown over. I think what we started in like 2015 or so. So I think it's kind of cool how it's just for us. Like we've started doing a few different things and like different podcast projects and stuff like
Yeah.
the astronomy one that we do and the outdoors one that we started doing. That's kind of cool too.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how much your podcasting stuff has developed.
It's cool. It's like I think it's a fun skill, and I always wanted to do broadcasting stuff, so I like that part of it. But it's fun. I like doing little shows. And thank you, Marina, for doing a little show this morning. So we are going to talk about two photographs that went up on Instagram. I don't know, a week or so ago. But one of them was from Crater Lake. I thought this was kind of a cool photo. But it was a really simple photo. I took that on the FG20 over here back in what would it be like June of 2012. I was at Crater Lake and I was taking one of the other pictures that we see up here on the board of like the whole panoramic rim of Crater Lake. I was trying to get that photo, but in the daytime I shot just another film photograph. But I really liked how deep the blues were, and it was kind of interesting. I'll pull it up here. It was funny. Someone had mentioned maybe it's something that's known about. It's probably like known as the Crater Lake Tiki Man, but they say that like if you look at this sideways, this section of rim, the reflection makes like a little Tiki Man face.
I see the Tiki Man.
Yeah, right.
That's funny.
Little eyes and nose. Yeah, so it's probably been known about for a while. People that stand there and be like, "Hey, it looks like a Tiki Man," but it's kind of cool.
That's cool. You got a photo of it.
I don't know if it's known as that or not, but some lady on Facebook said if you look at it sideways, it looks like a Tiki Man.
That's funny.
That's the first
It
time I'd heard of
does.
that. But yeah, it was cool. Looks like a little Tiki guy. But that was at Crater Lake, and we haven't really gone there in a long. Have we gone there ever?
We haven't. I've only been there once when I was a really little kid. I
Wow.
actually barely remember.
We should probably go up to Crater Lake a couple times. You know, that's
That'd be
one.
really cool.
It's the national park in Oregon, the only national park, but it's also to me one of the least interesting places for me to try and get
For
around to.
yeah, for the only national park in Oregon, there are a lot of other spots that are very beautiful.
I thought there were a lot of other spots that are
And
really
probably a
cool.
little more interesting for where you can get around to. Or as I
Yeah,
understand, it's a little more limited and
it is
what
pretty
you can
it's
really
pretty
do
limited,
there.
but that's I think maybe part of the nature of a lot of the national parks. I bet a lot of locals to a state might say that their national park is like limited in some ways.
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe not though, but I think Crater Lake is really cool, and it is super stunning how it's like just like such a perfect circular lake in the mountain
Yeah.
with the cone of the top of the mountain in the center of it. So all the story around it's really cool, and it's interesting. You can kind of get to it and see the whole national park in a pretty short circuit. But I think really as like square footage goes, or like square mileage of park, I think it's a smaller national park because it's just like that rim. It's just Mount
Right.
Mazama, or like what would be like the base of that mountain. But pretty interesting. It was cool though. I had a fun time going up there. But we should go up there this spring sometime.
Yeah, that'd be really neat.
Check out check out Crater Lake for a little while. There's probably a lot to do there. I know it's like overshot or it's over photographed. So sometimes that's kind of why I think about not doing that
Yeah.
because there's so many people that are going to be there and working it and stuff.
I bet there are some cool perspectives to shoot it
Oh yeah,
from. Or
yeah,
like that picture you were just showing me is a little different than other photos I've seen of it. I feel like Crater Lake is really because of the type of feature that it is and the reason that it's cool. It seems like the way that it's shot is sort of from above on the rim,
oh
like
sure,
looking
yeah,
down and showing the whole shape of or most of the shape of the lake
right, yeah,
with the little mountain inside of it,
yeah.
which is a really cool shot. But I feel like that's really like the primary way I've seen that area
We should
photographed.
take our kayaks there.
That would be so cool.
Oh,
I'd
I
love
think
to
you can
kayak
rent
there.
kayaks or something. I don't know. Maybe there's something like that. I don't know what the process is to get down to the
Down to the water.
down to the water of the lake. Yeah, I'm
That'd
not
be neat to
sure.
find out.
But yeah, we should figure out when that's open. We should go down there, do a little
Yeah.
tour, or do whatever down there. We'll
That'd be
find out
cool.
what the access is. I'm not sure what it is, but I know people do go down there and they swim and they paddle around and stuff in the lake, which
That'd
would be
be
really
neat to
cool.
check out.
I've
Yeah.
never done it. Yeah, so we should probably take advantage of take advantage of some of the stuff we can do at that park. So okay, going to the next photograph. This is the one that came out maybe a day after. So, but this is a photograph from Page, Arizona. Do you remember being out there?
I
It was a
do.
cool spot. Unforgettable, probably. Yeah. But Page, Arizona is really cool. And what is that? That's like the north border of Arizona as you right to at the border to cross into Utah. I think
Yeah,
even at a point we did cross into Utah. Like once we crossed this river. Was this the Colorado River?
I think so.
I think it might be, yeah. But yeah, I think once we crossed over the river, we were in Utah. But yeah, that
And
southwest corner or that southwest section of the United States is really cool. It's super arid out here. I don't even think there's sagebrush growing on that, but you see the eroded mesas uh, that were carved out by like the river flowing through. But it's really cool. I like this area out by Page. But I'm not sure what the is it Powell Lake? I think that's what it is. It's kind of a famous spot. There's a few famous photography spots in Page, Arizona. One of them is the Antelope Canyon. That one that's like
right,
that real narrow slot canyon of sandstone that looks really pretty. It's really a beautiful spot, but it's like run down with like 100 people a tour per hour.
right.
So I don't know. For me, it is and it isn't. There's other things besides the 8 things that are said to be what are photographed.
Right.
You know what I mean? A little bit. But this one, it really is another spot. I didn't know about it at the time. We took our photographs here, and then I think it was 6 months, maybe 2 years later, at a job I had, and I was looking at a Mercedes ad of a guy in a suit with a nice watch, like standing next to his car and sunglasses. I was like, wait a second, what's that background? Oh, that's like all of Powell Lake and a Page, Arizona out there.
No way.
Yeah, it was like that same pullout that we went up to, but that's like
How
a
funny.
a, a spot, or at least it was for that moment. It was like a spot for a commercial shoot, and I've seen like a handful of other things up from that rim up there. As you go up, I think you rise up in elevation a little bit, and there's a few pull offs that you can go to the park, and then kind of look out over the rim rock and the lake that's down below. But it was cool. I had a good time going up there.
Yeah, that was a really beautiful spot. It was interesting.
Yeah, I thought it. I thought it had a lot to offer. Well, I always really like the high desert, like southwest look of the desert like this, especially for photographs. And I really like it, like when this photograph was taken. Kind of, this is after sunset, and this is looking to the east, and you see that spectrum of atmospheres. It kind of goes up and gets lighter, like toward the blue sky. But you see all that dust and kind of murk that's down in the atmosphere on the ground as you look out flat
Yeah.
over a few hundred miles. And so you look out and you see that section where there is no more sunlight and it's just that dust has just turned to gray. But then you also see the gradient as it shifts over into the magenta and pink tones and then orange tones and then up back to like clear sky and blue tones. But it's kind of cool. I like that sort of spectrum or that kind of coppery spectrum of different colors that you see in the sunset.
Yeah, that's a really cool time to shoot for high desert stuff when you can like really get the colors that are there.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
seems like the high desert is really one of those more specific places where you have to be there just at the right time to get any of the colors that are
Yeah,
around.
it really seems to be that way. And that makes a lot of sense for what we did just recently. Is we just did like a springtime camping trip over to Eastern Oregon, which is a different type of high desert than what we find out in the Southwest. But this section of that range in northern Nevada and southeastern Oregon, you get that high desert area with a lot of rim rock and but a lot of sagebrush, and it's really a pretty arid high desert climate. But it was really cool. We went out there like weekend before last and spent like 3 days, I think.
Yeah,
That's the first time that I've gone out there in March. It
me
was cool.
too.
I enj-
Yeah, it was neat being there so early. We got lucky with the weather.
oh yeah, we really did. I was looking at that. I saw some people that were out there the week before. They said that they were pretty well served by the weather. They said that it got up into like the 60s and 70s on one of the
Oh
nice days.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, it got a little bit nice for them. But for us, it stayed pretty comfortable, really. Like after the first day when we were there, we were just getting pelted
Lots
by
of wind.
wind and stuff. That's the thing about it, which is great about it a bit too, is you get a number of pretty varied weather types during like the 72 hours that you're there, which I think is cool when you're thinking about it for photography because you get those different dynamics. and you can kind of put those together with different lighting dynamics, with the different ways that the clouds look, and different texture dynamics, structural dynamics as the atmosphere sort of changes. And I really like that part about landscape photography is when you have the landscape, but then you're really adding in some unique aspect to the atmospheric condition at that time. I
Yeah,
think that's part of photography of kind of capturing something that's kind of unique to that time of the place. And
definitely.
that's the interesting thing I think about landscape photography is adding in those elements of color or tone or mood that you get because you selected a certain time of day or a certain time of year to try and get that aspect or just to get that part photographed.
Yeah, that is a really cool part about it. Getting to be there during different times of the year.
Yeah, I liked it, and it's been tough because you going out to Eastern Oregon in the summertime in the high desert. It's been pretty difficult because it's really hot and it's really flat and it's really white.
Yes.
It's strange, like what we're
Very
talking
blown
about in
out.
Page. There's the dust that gets kicked up in the air, and in the day it's just kind of white and murky, and then in the evening it's a little bit red, but it's really uncomfortably hot. The sun's uncomfortably high and bright all the time, and so you never really get those interesting sort of dynamics throughout the day. It's only like the last hour of daylight and the first hour of sunrise. But like by 8 a.m. out there, it's just total exposure. And you remember that from being out in the desert too. So that's an interesting part of kind of shifting over to the winter where the sun's a little bit lower, or in the springtime a little bit like what we are now, where the sun's still a little bit lower in the northern hemisphere, but we have nice enough, bright enough weather that we can do a lot of landscape photography projects. And it was cool getting to do it all in a short amount of time up in those hills, looking out at Heart Mountain. Heart Mountain's a stunning feature too. That really goes against like even a lot of stuff that we might have seen in Arizona or the Southwest. It's kind of it's an under known feature of geography, given how interesting and how massive it is.
Yeah.
Probably, I mean, Heart Mountain is considered to be quite something, but outside of Oregon, I doubt that many people would know about it. But it just seems like a really like whoa, wow, what this?
When I tell people about my trips that I've done to Heart Mountain, they don't
Yeah.
know. They don't know where that is,
Oh yeah.
which is surprising. I
Nobody
think
goes
it's
to
so
Eastern Oregon.
impressive looking. It's just flat land and then just straight up this
Yeah.
huge, really expansive mountain.
Yeah. It's weird those PNW vibes that we see about,
Oh
all the
yeah,
that
it's
ends
really
at the
restricted.
Cascades.
Yeah, it seems like that's where the focus is. Like
Yeah.
that's what you're supposed to think of when you think of the
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest.
Waterfalls only.
Waterfalls and tall trees,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
which
interesting.
is a beautiful part of Oregon.
It
But
is,
there's
yeah, but it's
so much more. And there's a lot more that I'd say is a little more interesting or more varied.
there definitely is a huge amount of geography that's way more varied than what we give it credit for in some of the short-handed marketing. But it's cool. I'm glad that we get to go around and travel and check out all the cool underknown Oregon stuff out there. It's way more known. I think now, just even the last 5-7 years, because of
Yeah.
all of the granular elements of social media that we have, like all the pictures that we put up from places, and then all of the bajillions of other pictures that other people have put up from all of those different kind of more refined locations. We never had that information before, even back in the early 2000s when we go out to Eastern Oregon. It was really separated at that time. That was really before the proliferation of the internet and before people had cell phones to kind of communicate back and forth. But when you go out to Plush or you go out to Riley or Wagon Tire, where the population's two, those people were not in contact with Boise and Portland. They weren't like hip centers. And so there's just like a weird feeling when you get out there. Nowadays it doesn't really seem to be that way. Or it seems to be like more integrated. So it seems like it's more accessible
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. I don't know. I remember like one of the big things was like you go out and like you'd get coffee somewhere, and immediately when you leave, like even the smaller towns on the Pacific Coast side, like on the I-5 corridor, that was all kind of the Californication that kind of spread up northward through what would be the state of Jefferson and Southern Oregon and made a bajillion espresso shops, or from Seattle down and from California up. It seems like it pretty well took care of Oregon, at least the populated areas of Oregon in the 90s and early 2000s. But man, as soon as you got over to Bend, even in Bend in 2000, that was a cowboy town. It's kind of, or at least it felt like that when I was a kid. In a comparison to the hip, sort of puffy jacket rock climbing culture
Oh
that seems to
yeah.
be proliferated there now, didn't seem to be that way a while back. It seemed to be like ranchers, like cow herding ranchers.
That's a funny way to picture Bend.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's weird. Yeah, Bend has been one of the fastest growing cities in Oregon, I think, for 2 decades, or maybe it was the past 2 decades, but like the 90s and the 2000s, it got huge. It used to be about the size of Grants Pass.
Oh wow.
I mean, I guess
Yeah,
everything would have
it's
been.
developed so much.
Yeah, it really has. I think it's probably pushed over 100,000 people now. But I think for a while it was on the rise, and people were surprised that it went from like 40,000 to 90,000 in a decade or something. It was a fast expansion.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like Bend is really like one of the known cities in Oregon now.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. It's strange too how there's. I wonder if like Burns
Oh, sure.
is Burns ever
Yeah,
gonna
in
take off like
20 years.
wildfire? People are just loving Burns. I was wondering that, or like when we were at a Plush, and you look around, and you think, wow, like is anybody ever gonna move out here? Is
Yeah.
this ever gonna blow up as like some big hub? I mean, it's on the highway. There's nothing out there though, but it just seems like oh, it's weird how like this spot became huge, and this spot didn't become huge. It's really strange how that goes. But all that we'll save for another podcast. Marina, thank you very much for doing this morning episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast with me.
Thanks so much for having me on your show,
I
bud.
appreciate you talking about these photos from Crater Lake and Paige and getting into our camping trip a little bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into that more too. I want to talk a lot more about all the rabbit stuff we did and the camping stuff, the photo stuff. I have a bunch of those photos edited now too. We should
Oh,
look at
that's
those.
great.
I'll post them and we'll talk about them. It'll be cool. So, Marina, I appreciate it a bunch. On behalf of Marina Hansen, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast.